Hello there guys, Francis Gray here, and in today's video we're going to be building a 3D printed resin kit of Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, known from the DC universe. Okay guys, so I've been sent this kit through the post. So this is a private commission for a collector, and it's obviously supposed to be Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy together romantically, I suppose, and it's featured on a oval base here. So this has all been 3D printed. So these are parts of resin, and then this is the only filament part. Now I'll start off with the base. So it's nice and smooth underneath, but obviously you do have the print lines, which you can't really avoid with filament. Aww. So this is all good and well, but on the outside you might see that there's like a couple of imperfections like that there, and then some of these tiles, you can tell where it's like a different print type, where it's printed in a different way. So some of this will need cleaning up, but the kit parts themselves, the resin parts, are quite clean, but they don't fit perfectly together. So I'll give you an example. So this is Harley's top torso, and this is the bottom torso. So obviously it connects like that, but as you can see there, you've got seam lines that run all the way around. And it seems like it's an ongoing thing with all parts of the kit. Now you usually get this with resin kits anyway, so it just means filling those in with milliput or Aves epoxy before you go ahead and grey prime them. So the clients told me that all parts have been grey primed, and yes they have. But the problem is, normally you clean the parts up first and then you grey prime ready for paint. But in this case, there's like certain parts that have still got the little imperfections that connected to the spruts where it got 3D printed. So all these need clean up. So everything needs a quick once over. I need to file parts down. We need to add milliput to make parts fit better. And then once we're happy with everything, we can then go out and give it another coat of grey primer. So I'm going to do some cleanup work now. There's no point in recording that because it'll make the video way too long. So I'll just go ahead and do that, and then I'll jump to the next section.
2,000 years later.
Okay guys, so after taking quite a while going through and getting rid of all the little imperfections, for the next part we need to start prepping all the connecting parts to basically fit better. So like I said in the intro part, we're going to use either milliput or Aves epoxy modeling clay, and we're going to add various parts to push them back together, and then the clay will fill in the missing details or the missing gaps, which we can then tidy up at a later date. Okay guys, so for the next part we're going to go ahead and we're going to glue the two guns to the holsters, and these will later go on both of Harley's thighs. So now we can break out the Aves epoxy and we can make this work a lot better. So I didn't show me mixing it because obviously that'll take the video a bit longer. So just make sure that you mix equal measures of A and B together, mix thoroughly, and then once it's all one unified colour, then you're good to go basically. So as you can see there, just basically pushing it on in and then connecting the next part in place, and then that'll push the clay into any missing details. And then I just go in with a sculpting tool and then just take away any excess. Okay, so for the next part I'm going to add a base tone of a flesh colour, so I'm going to go in with a nice Humbrol number 61 regular flesh colour. Okay, so now that the flesh colour is dried, for the next part we're going to go in with some dark green and we're going to add a base tone to some of Harley's clothes. And now we're going to go in with a medium brown and we're going to start painting some of the tree/vines. And for the next part I'm going to go in with more green and I'm going to paint more of Ivy's dress. While all those are drying, for the next part we can go in with a nice yellow base coat for Harley's hair. And next we're going to go in with some bright red and we're going to add some base tones to all the red parts of Harley's costume. And for the next part I'm going to go in with more medium brown and I'm going to add a base tone coat to Ivy's hair. Now I know she's a redhead, but this will just help make the red a bit more deeper when we add it later on. Okay, so while all those base coats are drying, for the next stage I'm going to go in and I'm going to start work on the filament base. So as you can see there, it's already been given a few coats of a white primer, and basically that's just to lighten everything up. And when we go to make some of these tiles, because these tiles have to be like a black and white check pattern, a bit like a chessboard, and that'll just help paint the whites later on. So black won't have any problem going over the white, but it would be really bad to paint white over black, if that makes any sense.
Huh?
So yeah, so I'm just going to add a general base tone to all the black squares, and we'll leave that to dry and then we can build up over it as we go. Okay, so while we've got the black paint already out, I might as well go in and start adding a base tone of black to all, as you guessed it, all the black areas of Harley's costume, because
because everybody knows Harley is mainly known for being red and black. Okay, so now that all the base tones have been applied, for the next stage we can add some stainage or some shading with some various colours of watercolour. So as you can see here, I'm going in with Harley's hair, and I'm going to add a dark brown, and then this is just going to get into all the little nooks and crannies, and then we're going to take a damp cloth and we're going to wipe away the top surface excess, and then that'll just leave the harder to reach to nooks and crannies a lot darker in tone, and it just goes ahead and adds a nice layer of detail. And now back to the red for a base tone to the holsters, or to one of the holsters on Harley's thighs. So back to Harley's hair, and now that the where the watercolour's dried, for the next stage I'm going to go in with some soft cream from a tester pot, and we're going to add a general dry brush or as a highlight over all the raised surfaces. Okay, so while we're talking about hair, now there's a bit of a gap between where Ivy's head and where Ivy's hair meet, so this will have to be filled in. So regular standard milliput to the rescue. So I'm just taking little bits, rolling them out, and then just getting them on in there, and then pushing them on in with the sculpting tool, and then trying to blend it all and make it all look natural, and then we can go over that later on with more brown paint. Okay, so back to the base. So now I'm going in with a very fine detailed brush, and I'm adding in all the straight edges to the checkered pattern on the floor, and we can then also start adding a base coat around the sides to make it a bit more neater. Okay, so for the next part I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use just a few different various colours just to start adding some more details and more highlights to the kit. Okay, so for the next part I needed to use my trusty magnifier to make everything a lot bigger, so I can go in and add a lot more details to both Ivy and Harley's face. Okay, so for the next part I'm going to go in with some various colours of watercolour, and I'm going to make the base look a little bit more used, a little bit more dirty, a little more grimy, and yeah, you'll see in the end. Okay, so back to the tree/vine support. So now all the base tone colours are dry, we're going to go in with a dark green watercolour, and I'm just going to give it a once over and then gently wipe away the excess, and then basically this just gives it a bit more of a earthly tone rather than just a standard brown. And for the next part we're going to go in with some medium orange, and we're going to add some dry brush highlights to all of Ivy's hair. Okay guys, so for the next part I'm just gonna go ahead and leave the video to play at speed up footage, and it's basically just me adding more details to the kit. Okay guys, so for the next part I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and super glue the vine structure to the filament base. Now, if I'm honest, this was a bit of a nightmare. It didn't really want to line up, or the outside lined up, but when you put pressure to try and put it into the peg, unfortunately it snapped the sides of the vines off, and there's nothing really you can do about it. I think it was just like a millimeter too small, so it might have just been like a 3D printing error, or I don't know, I don't really. But if I'm honest, the filament base that's probably the weakest part of this kit. It's where the main problem lies, because they want you to glue it and connect it via the pegs provided, but with it being filament, it is crazily weak. So as soon as you put any pressure onto it, all the pegs basically just snapped. So I had to work around it. So seeing as the side parts to the vine all like broke away, I decided to use some epoxy resin and some super glue on the outside, and really like weld this main part to the base. So as you can see there, 4 clamps holding it on either end, and yeah, had to leave that for a good few hours to dry. So while that's drying, I might as well crack on and start gluing some more parts to the main figures. Okay, so back to the base. Now, the super glue has been given a good day to fully dry, fully harden, as well as the little parts of epoxy resin that was added to the centre part. So now that that's done, we need to go ahead and super glue those broken bits of vine back into place, and then I'm going to sculpt the missing detail between the parts with, you've guessed it, Abe's epoxy modelling clay. The reason why I chose Abe's over Milliput is Abe's basically, once dried, is a bit tougher. So with this being a base and people will be handling it, it made sense to make it a bit more robust. So yeah, so just sculpting tools to the rescue, and I'm just going to leave it a good few hours to dry, and then we can start adding some more base coats. Okay, so for the next part I wanted to go ahead and I wanted to add a nice green felt base to, well, obviously the inside of the base. So just adding my PVA glue into a nice funky pattern there, and I'm going to use my finger to move it all around, and then we're going to sit it on top of the felt. We're going to stretch the felt out and we're going to leave it to dry overnight.
Tomorrow for sure.
Okay, so now that that should be nice and dry, let's go ahead and cut it to make this nice and tidy. Okay, so now that that's done, for the next part we need to start adding the main figures to the base. So I'm going to start with Ivy, and I'm going to use the pegs provided, and hopefully the pegs are a bit better this time, and then we can have a bit of a play around and try to add Harley as well. Okay, so at this point I had to go around, I had to fix a few mistakes, because it was quite difficult to get Harley and Ivy to connect, I suppose. The parts just didn't really want to line up all that great. It took a bit of tweaking, and the only way to get around it that I found, and then I realised why the kit had these extra parts of tile with them, was Harley's feet were a couple of millimeters levitating off the floor. So same again, the peg system to the filament part of this base was useless, it just came away. So if you're thinking about building this kit, I would strongly recommend asking the person who's printing it off to print the base on resin, or if you won't budge on that and it has to be filament, then you might be easier just taking the pegs off and then just trying to do some kind of like drill and pin peg system yourself with wire. Definitely use epoxy resin if you can, because this part of the kit just really didn't want to work together. So thankfully with these extra bits of tile there, it managed to bridge that gap. But as you can see there, we're having to take some extra steps to try and blend it in to make it look natural. Okay guys, so as you see there, once Harley's right arm is put into position, there is a bit of a gap on the top part and underneath as well, which stands out quite a lot from Ivy's hair. So same again, regular standard mini put to the rescue, just pushing it on in there with a cocktail stick, and then we'll blend it out and then we'll sculpt it, and then we need to retrace our steps with the paint job and try and make this blend a little bit better. Okay, so now that we've had to go ahead and use those tiles in a different way to help prop Harley up, we need to go ahead and we need to add some more milliput to create more vines, I suppose, so everything flows a lot better rather than just having standard weird vines going nowhere. So unfortunately, if the base worked a bit better, I wouldn't have had to do this step, so it was a bit of a pain in the butt, but you know, all's well that ends well, I suppose. Okay, so for the next part I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue the rose hand into place. Now this is the weakest part of the kit, so I would suggest probably leaving this to the last step, or one of the last steps. And yeah, all's well, but you have to really be careful with it. Okay, so I need to blend this, the vines breaking out of the earth a little bit better. So what I did was I took some regular just dry mud from the garden, with just a tiny little bit. I left it a few days to fully dry, and then crunch it up into tiny microscopic little bits. Mix in some thick PVA glue, and then just apply it on with a brush. So what this does is it obviously gives it the like a real life earth effect, but obviously with it being mixed in with the PVA glue, you don't have to worry about it coming away or crumbling off or anything like that. So yeah, it's a nice little tip there for you. Okay, so now that that mud part is fully dried, I'm going to go in with another topping coat of PVA glue, but this time I'm going to sprinkle on some scenic grass scatter, and what that basically does is it gives it the earth tones of vegetation. So it basically just brings this piece a little bit more to life, or makes it a little bit more vibrant. So you'll see in a bit. So for the next part, I'm going to go in with a dark green watercolour, and I'm just going to go over the grass scatter part. What this does is it basically gives it like a protective layer over the top, make sure there's no extra bits that's going to come loose, and then obviously it darkens it down to make it look like it's a bit more like moss rather than like blades of grass. So yeah, leave that to dry, and then we can think about maybe sealing it with yet another PVA glue coating. Now this wouldn't be poison ivy if there wasn't more plant life. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add some fake plastic plants. You usually get these from like aquarium shops or general pet shops, or sometimes you see them in like Home Depot kind of areas of superstores. So yeah, just take little snippets of different variations of plant, and then just apply them into place with generous coating of PVA glue, and then leave them to dry. So at this point I'm just going to go in with a titanium white, and I'm going to add a highlight to the white squares, basically just to add a little bit more vibrancy. Now I don't want to go on completely all the square, because obviously I don't want to go over the like the mud earth or the moss. So this is just a general highlight over the areas that are visible, that haven't been tainted yet. So yeah, it just goes a long way to make it a little bit more vibrant. Okay, so at this point I sent some photos to the client, and the client got back to me with a few areas that she would like me to change. And one of those areas was she wanted Ivy's hair a bit more of a richer red, rather than like a light like ginger red / brown colour. So easily fixed. Just go in with watered down red wash. Let that to dry, and then just go over with a medium red dry brush just to add highlights later on once the wash had dried. So just a few little minor edits to do now, and I believe it's finished. Okay guys, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know I might have gone a little bit on the long side, but there was a lot of steps to take with this one. But I think it turned out really nice in the end, and I'm really happy with the result. So if you've enjoyed this video, or if you've liked the finished result, please smash that like button and share on Facebook and Twitter, because it helps new people find the YouTube channel, which I'm always appreciative of. Thank you for any help. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on future builds. So once again, I'm Francis Gray, and this is the Harley and Ivy 3D resin kit build. I'll see you in the next one.